At my baby's baptism, my mother-in-law stood up and announced, "This child deserves a real mother." My husband smiled and handed her the adoption papers with my name crossed out. Stunned, I screamed, "You can't do this." But as the priest gasped, a lawyer stepped forward and revealed a truth that left everyone frozen. I don't even know where to start. My hands are still shaking as I type this, and my stomach is in knots. If someone told me a year ago that my own husband would try to erase me from my child's life, I would have laughed in their face. But that's exactly what happened. And I swear, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it either. The church was packed. My family, his family, friends, and even some of his business associates had shown up. It was supposed to be a beautiful day, our daughter Sophie's baptism. I stood at the front of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, holding my baby, feeling so happy. The soft hum of the organ filled the air, and the priest was just getting ready to begin. I glanced at my husband, Ethan, expecting to see that same happiness on his face. Instead, he looked calm. Too calm. And then his mother, Margaret, stood up. At first, I thought she was about to say something sentimental, maybe a blessing, some emotional grandmotherly speech. But then she opened her mouth. "This child deserves a real mother," she announced loudly. I felt my breath hitch. The church went silent. People turned in their seats. My father's face twisted in confusion, and my mother gripped the pew so tightly her knuckles turned white. The priest stopped mid-sentence, his brows furrowing. I clutched Sophie tighter, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then Ethan smirked. He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a thick envelope, and handed it to his mother. She took it with a triumphant expression, like she had just won something. I glanced down at the papers and my stomach dropped. Adoption papers. With my name crossed out. My vision blurred. My ears rang. I read the words over and over, trying to understand what I was looking at. My name, crossed out in thick black ink. Ethan's name still there. Sophie's name still there. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. I forced in a shaky breath. "You can't do this," I whispered. I don't even know if I was talking to him or her. The priest looked horrified. Someone gasped loudly. My best friend covered her mouth in shock. Ethan tilted his head, like I was some silly little thing that didn't understand. "It's already done," he said smoothly, like he was explaining something obvious. "You were never the right choice, Una." I staggered back a step. The room tilted. Margaret smiled. The way she was looking at me, like I was nothing. Like I was just an obstacle that had finally been removed. I turned to Ethan, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold onto Sophie. My voice cracked. "You did this behind my back?" He sighed, as if I was exhausting him. "Look, you've been so distracted," he said, waving a hand. "I talked to a lawyer. The courts will see it's for the best. Sophie needs a stable home. My mother and I can provide that." I felt like I was going to be sick. For the past 6 months, I had felt something was off. Ethan had been cold, distant. At first, I thought it was just stress from work. Then little things started adding up. He started missing my doctor's appointments during my pregnancy. He would forget to pick up things for the baby, even when I reminded him 10 times. He suddenly had late nights at the office that he never had before. Margaret started dropping comments about how some women just aren't cut out for motherhood. And then, 2 months ago, I found a hidden bank statement in his office. A private account. Large transfers. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off. "It's for a surprise," he said. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. I had just given birth. I was exhausted. I trusted my husband. And now? Now he was standing there, in front of all our family and friends, handing his mother adoption papers, as if I had never existed. The murmurs turned into loud whispers. Someone in the back said, "What the hell?" The priest stepped forward, his face pale. I don't understand," he stammered. "Mr. Montgomery, this is highly..." Before he could finish, another voice cut through the chaos. A man in a gray suit stood up from one of the pews in the middle of the church. I didn't recognize him, but the second I saw the briefcase in his hand, something inside me stirred. He walked forward, his shoes clicking against the church floor. Ethan's expression shifted. For the first time that day, he looked nervous. The man stopped a few feet away from us. Then, with calm precision, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out another set of documents. "Actually," he said, his voice crisp and clear, "Mr. Montgomery, you're the one being removed." Margaret froze. Ethan visibly tensed. The church went dead silent. My breath caught in my throat. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't the only one with a plan. Margaret's mouth hung open, like a fish gasping for air. Ethan's grip tightened on the papers he had just handed her. The man with the briefcase, my lawyer, stood tall, adjusting his tie like he had all the time in the world. His name was Daniel Cho, and he wasn't just any lawyer. He was one of the best family law attorneys in New York. And he had been preparing for this moment for months. "Excuse me?" Margaret finally sputtered, her voice shrill. "Who do you think you are?" Daniel didn't even look at her. He turned to me, his expression calm but firm. "Ms. Park, I have the documents you asked for. Would you like me to read them out loud, or should I hand them directly to Mr. Montgomery?" I swallowed hard. My hands were still shaking, but I lifted my chin. "Read them," I said. Ethan took a single step forward, his jaw tightening. "Una, don't make a scene." Daniel didn't even blink. He cleared his throat and unfolded the first document. "This," he said, holding up the papers, "is a notarized statement from a private investigator hired by Ms. Park." Margaret's smug expression vanished. Ethan stiffened. The investigator tracked Mr. Montgomery's activities over the past 6 months. According to financial records and surveillance reports, Mr. Montgomery has been secretly funneling money into an offshore account, totaling nearly $500,000. A gasp rippled through the church. Margaret gripped Ethan's arm. "Tell me that's not true," she hissed. But Ethan wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. And for the first time that day, he looked scared. Daniel turned the page. "This second document," he continued, "contains a signed lease agreement for a luxury apartment in Miami, Florida. It was paid for in full by Mr. Montgomery, under the name of a woman named Natalie Whitmore." The entire church erupted. People were whispering. Some guests stood up in shock. My father, who had been frozen this whole time, lunged forward, but my brother grabbed his arm before he could get to Ethan. Margaret looked like she was about to faint. I felt my pulse pounding. My mouth was dry. I knew it. I had suspected for months that Ethan was cheating. The sudden work trips. The missing money. The way he started pulling away as if I was just a temporary guest in his life. But now I had proof. Ethan took a slow step back, his face twisting. "Una, I can explain." Daniel cut him off. "The final document," he said, "is a copy of a petition for full custody of Sophie, filed by Ms. Park 3 weeks ago." The room froze again. Margaret gasped like someone had slapped her. Ethan's head snapped toward me. "What?" His voice was sharp, his face red with anger. I held my baby tighter. I felt my whole body shaking, but I stood my ground. "You were planning to take Sophie away from me," I said, my voice steady. "So I made sure that when the time came, I'd take you down first." Ethan lost it. "You set me up," he hissed, stepping closer. This is insane. You think you can just take my daughter?" "My daughter?" Daniel didn't even flinch. "Actually, according to these documents, Miss Park is the sole legal guardian of Sophie as of last week." Silence. It was Margaret who broke it. She turned to Ethan, her hands shaking. "You told me the lawyers were on our side," she shrieked. "You said everything was handled." Ethan ignored her. His eyes were locked on me. "You don't understand," he said, his voice dangerously low. "You don't get to do this to me." I finally let out a small, bitter laugh. "You did this to yourself," I said. I saw something flash in his eyes, something dark. And then, without warning, he lunged. He reached for Sophie, our baby, and I barely had time to react before my brother and my father grabbed him. "Get off me!" Ethan roared, struggling against them. The entire church was in chaos now. People were yelling. The priest was calling for security. And that's when I heard it. A new voice. "That's enough." A woman stepped forward. Tall, blonde, familiar. Natalie Whitmore. Ethan's mistress. And she did not look happy. Margaret turned, her face contorting in horror. "Who the hell are you?" Natalie didn't even look at her. She looked straight at Ethan, her arms crossed, her lips curled in disgust. "You really are a piece of work," she said. Ethan's face drained of color. Natalie, what are you doing here?" Natalie let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, don't play dumb, sweetheart." She reached into her purse and pulled out her own set of papers. I felt my stomach drop. Natalie waved them in the air. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" she said. "You promised me we were moving to Miami, that we'd start fresh. But guess what I found in your briefcase?" She threw the papers at him. Ethan caught them, fumbled, stared down at them. I couldn't see what they were. But then I saw his face change. Panic. Fear. "Nat," he said, his voice shaking. "Let's talk about this in private." "No," she snapped. "You don't get to talk your way out of this. Not after what you did." She turned to me. "You're Una, right?" she asked. I nodded, completely stunned. She let out a deep breath. "You and I need to talk." My heart hammered. "About what?" Natalie's expression hardened. "About Ethan's other bank account. The one he didn't tell you about. The one in Switzerland." The entire church felt like it was about to explode. People were standing, whispering, gripping their seats like they were watching a courtroom drama unfold in real time. Margaret looked like she was seconds away from fainting. Ethan was frozen. My father was ready to tear him apart. And now, his mistress, the woman I didn't even know existed until a few minutes ago, was standing in front of him, holding another set of papers. Natalie threw them at him. "You lying, cheating son of a," she started, but she stopped herself, shaking her head. "I should have known. I should have known you were scamming me too." Ethan didn't move. He didn't even look at the papers. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Natalie turned to me, her arms crossed, her expression furious but steady. "You think he only betrayed you?" she asked. "Honey, Ethan has been planning to disappear. He was never staying in New York. He was planning to leave both of us." A sharp gasp shot through the crowd. Margaret snapped her head toward Ethan, her lips trembling. "Is this true?" she whispered. Ethan finally moved. He shook his head quickly, his face twisted in panic. No, that's ridiculous. "Una, don't listen to her. She's just trying to get back at me," Natalie laughed bitterly. "Oh, really?" She reached into her bag again and pulled out a flash drive. I felt my stomach drop. "What is that?" I asked. Natalie looked at me, then at the priest. "Father, is there a laptop here?" The priest, who had been standing there looking like he was about to faint, nodded quickly. "In the office." "Good," she said. "Because I have something everyone needs to hear." 10 minutes later, everyone had crammed into the church hall, where a laptop was set up on a small podium. Natalie plugged in the flash drive, her hands shaking. She clicked a file, and the sound of a recorded phone call filled the room. Ethan's voice came through the speakers. "The papers are ready?" A second voice answered. A man's voice. Calm. Professional. "Yes, Mr. Montgomery. The identity change has been finalized. Your new passport will be ready in 2 weeks." My whole body went cold. Margaret gasped so hard she choked. The voice continued. "The offshore accounts are secure, and the house in Switzerland is in your new name. Once the funds are fully transferred, you'll be able to disappear without a trace." The entire room erupted. People screamed. Someone cursed loudly. My hands clamped over my mouth. I turned to Ethan, but he was already backing away. His face was pure panic. His hands were shaking. The truth hit me so hard I felt like I was going to collapse. Ethan wasn't just planning to take my daughter away from me. He was planning to disappear entirely. He was going to wipe his name clean, vanish, and leave both me and Natalie behind. I felt something inside me snap. "You were going to abandon your own child?" I choked out. Ethan finally snapped out of it. He spun around to run. But then the church doors slammed open. And 2 men in black suits stepped inside. Margaret screamed. Ethan froze mid-step. The 2 men, clearly agents, walked forward, flashing their badges. "Mr. Ethan Montgomery," one of them said, his voice firm, "you are under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit identity fraud." The room erupted again. People were yelling. Margaret was clutching her chest like she was going to pass out. Ethan shook his head violently, stepping backward. No, this is a mistake." One of the agents grabbed his arm. Ethan tried to pull away, but the other agent pulled out handcuffs and snapped them onto his wrists. I felt lightheaded. I was still trying to process it. Ethan wasn't just a cheating bastard. He was a criminal. And this wasn't just about stealing my daughter. This was about him running from the law. As the agents dragged Ethan toward the door, I saw him thrashing. "YNA," he screamed. "You can't let them do this. You need me." I stepped forward. I looked him dead in the eyes. And I said, "No, Ethan. I never did." His face twisted in pure rage. But then his mother stepped in front of him. Margaret. She slapped him across the face so hard the sound echoed in the church. "You are a disgrace," she hissed. Ethan stared at her. He looked like a cornered animal. "Mom," he whispered. But Margaret turned her back on him. The agents dragged him out of the church. And just like that, he was gone. The whole room was shaken. I could still hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I turned to Sophie, who was still in my arms, sleeping peacefully. My father came up beside me, putting a hand on my shoulder. "It's over," he said quietly. I wanted to believe that. But then Natalie spoke again. "Actually," she said, rubbing her arms. "It's not." I turned to her. She looked pale. "There's something else," she said. "Something I haven't told you yet." I felt the dread creep up my spine. "What?" I whispered. Natalie swallowed hard. "Ethan might not be working alone." The church was still buzzing with whispers. People were standing around in small groups, shaken, whispering, murmuring things I couldn't even register. Ethan was gone, dragged away in cuffs. Margaret was sitting in a pew, staring at the ground, shaking. But Natalie wasn't finished. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. There's more, she said. Something you don't know. I felt a new kind of dread settle over me. What? She hesitated. Then, finally, she said, Ethan wasn't just planning to run. He had help. I went completely still. Who? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Natalie took a deep breath, her fingers tightening into fists. Margaret, she said. A heavy silence followed. Then, from the pew, Margaret jerked up. You're lying, she said immediately. But her voice wavered. Natalie turned slowly to face her. You knew, she said. Didn't you? Margaret shook her head. No, I would never. You helped him hide the money, Natalie pressed. You helped him move things around. You introduced him to the people who could make it happen. My heart stopped. Margaret's face was pale. Her hands twitched in her lap. I felt something inside me crack. Tell me she's lying, I said. Margaret's eyes darted to mine. Her lips trembled. And then she did the one thing I never thought she would. She said nothing. She didn't deny it. That was all the confirmation I needed. My fingers tightened around Sophie. My chest felt hollow. You were going to take her from me, I said. My voice didn't even sound like my own. Margaret blinked rapidly. Una, listen, Eno. The entire church fell silent at my outburst. You were part of it, I said, my voice shaking. You were part of everything. You called me unfit, but all this time, you were helping him commit crimes. Margaret's breath hitched. I did it for Sophie, she whispered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You did it for control, I spat. Margaret flinched. You never wanted me in your family, I continued, my voice growing stronger. You never even wanted Ethan to marry me. And when you realized you couldn't push me out, you found a different way. Tears filled her eyes. That's not true. It is, I said coldly. And now, because of you, your son is going to prison. Margaret let out a broken sob. I didn't care. I turned around. I was done. As I walked toward the exit, my father stepped forward, his face dark with disgust. You will never see my daughter or granddaughter again, he said to Margaret. His voice was deadly calm. You are finished. Margaret didn't even fight back. For the first time, she looked small. But I wasn't going to feel sorry for her. Not after everything. Margaret was investigated. Turns out, she had been moving money for Ethan, signing documents, and pulling strings behind the scenes. When Ethan's trial started, she was subpoenaed. And guess what? She turned on him instantly. Tried to paint herself as an innocent mother, as someone who was just helping her son. No one believed her. Ethan ended up getting 7 years in federal prison for fraud and money laundering. Margaret wasn't charged, but she lost everything. Her reputation? Ruined. Her social circle? Gone. Her money? Seized by the IRS. She tried to reach out to me once. I never responded. After everything, I moved back to Brooklyn. I focused on raising Sophie. I rebuilt my life. And I never looked back. I kept one picture from the baptism, one frame of Margaret's face the moment she realized Ethan was a criminal. It reminds me of one thing. I won. And they? They lost everything.